Hello, TTI family. Ready to conquer the 7 seas or at least a very determined garage floor? In this project by That Boat Dude, we witnessed the glorious comeback of a 1966 Fjordling 17, a once proud Norwegian speedboat that had clearly been enjoying an extended retirement. The goal? Turn this vintage fiberglass legend into a modern, high-performance machine that no longer smells like regret and old fuel. The journey begins with a harsh reality check. Years of neglect, moisture, and "I'll fix it later" energy have taken their toll. The hull is packed with debris, stagnant water, and materials that have aged about as gracefully as milk left in the sun. Dust, leaves, and crumbling parts fill the interior, while the bilge offers up a lovely blend of mold and fuel fumes. It's not pretty, but it is honest work. The cleanup phase might not be glamorous, but it's absolutely essential. Every scrap of trash, every rogue screw, and every soggy, rotten fragment has to go. Only then can the real condition of the hull be revealed. Armed with an angle grinder, abrasive discs, safety gear, and a healthy respect for airborne fiberglass, he begins stripping the interior layer by layer. As the old coatings disappear, the boat starts telling its secrets. Hairline cracks, resin blisters, and hidden voids emerge exactly the kind of surprises you don't want to discover at full throttle. At this stage, it's worth taking a moment to appreciate the boat itself, because this isn't just any fiberglass project, it's a legend with a passport. The Fjordling 17, built by Fjordplast in Norway during the 1960s, holds a special place in boating history. Back then, Scandinavian waters were rough, cold, and unforgiving. So the Fjordling was designed with a deep V hull and a narrow beam to slice through chop like a knife through frozen butter. Light, agile, and surprisingly quick, it performed beautifully with engines in the 70 to 150 horsepower range. In other words, it was fast for its time. By pairing this classic hull with a Mercury Racing XR2, He pushes the Fjordling far beyond what its designers ever imagined, probably without their permission, but definitely with style. To rebuild the tunnel running along the hull's centerline, fiberglass is chosen. This tunnel isn't just structural. It plays a key role in how water flows under the boat, improving balance and stability at speed. To reinforce it, Divinycell closed-cell PVC foam is added, a favorite in professional boat building. Fiberglass provides strength, but the internal wooden components control how forces move through the hull. And that brings us to the transom, the most critical piece in any outboard-powered boat. The original transom is completely shot, softened by years of water intrusion. Rebuilding starts with a precise layering process: fiberglass mat, polyester resin, Divinycell core, then more fiberglass on top. Once cured, this sandwich construction forms a lightweight yet incredibly stiff composite panel that resists, flex, and absorbs vibration. Next come the stringers, the backbone of the boat. Using 15mm marine-grade plywood, 4 longitudinal stringers are fabricated and bonded into place. The remaining plywood becomes the new transom, cut to suit a modern Mercury Racing XR2 outboard. Since this engine demands a higher performance setup, the transom is raised by about 5 centimeters and paired with a hydraulic jack plate for adjustable engine height. Each stringer is bedded in thick resin, fully encapsulated with fiberglass, and transformed into a structural powerhouse. Knees are added to tie the transom and stringers together, ensuring engine torque and wave impacts are handled smoothly. Every joint is carefully glassed, rolled, and sealed, because this boat isn't just being repaired, it's being reborn. Early on, you'll notice filler resin being worked into corners where the stringers meet the hull. These fillets smooth out sharp angles and help the fiberglass mat lay down cleanly without trapping air. Once cured, everything gets coated in resin, followed by layers of chopped strand mat. This step locks the hull, stringers, and bulkheads together into one solid, waterproof structure. Fiberglass shines here for a good reason. It's strong, flexible, corrosion-resistant, and doesn't rot like wood or complain like metal. Properly laminated, it becomes both a structural support and a watertight skin that can flex with the hull in rough conditions. Meanwhile, the bilge and stringer system gets sealed, leveled, and wrapped in fiberglass like it's being tucked in for a long nap. Once all the major structural pieces are finally in place, the real make it pretty without ruining it phase begins. The new framework goes through grinding and fairing, which is basically boat surgery mixed with extreme patience. The stern and interior are carefully shaped, so future fiberglass layers don't throw a tantrum and refuse to bond. The Fjordling's tunnel design is especially demanding. This area needs to be smoother than a freshly waxed bowling lane if it's going to perform properly at speed. The process starts with sanding and reshaping the tunnel edges, sealing tiny cracks with resin filler before they grow into bigger problems later. After lamination, coarse sanding, usually 40 to 60 grit, knocks down resin drips and reveals any imperfections. Fairing compound fixes the flaws, followed by medium grit sanding to refine the surface. Attention then shifts to fabricating and fitting the transom cover, a critical piece that seals the rear deck and absorbs constant stress and vibration. Working at night under focused lighting helps reveal high spots and shadows that daylight hides. The hull's curve has to flow naturally from the bottom all the way to the transom without sudden bumps or dips. Once the channels are cleaned up and reshaped, marine sealant and primer are applied inside the openings. This step is all about future-proofing because nobody wants corrosion making a comeback tour. Once the fit is perfect, the cap is bonded using catalyzed resin and fiberglass reinforcement. This step merges everything into one solid unit, spreading stress evenly and preventing future cracks. Finally, another intense sanding session ensures the boat is clean, smooth, and ready for its next transformation. At this stage, it's worth taking a moment to appreciate the boat itself, because this isn't just any fiberglass project, it's a legend with a passport. From a hydrodynamic perspective, the setup is a masterclass in controlled madness. The deep V hull works together with the raised transom and hydraulic jack plate to let the propeller spin in cleaner, less turbulent water. This reduces cavitation, improves acceleration, and makes the boat feel sharper and more responsive. Raise the engine by just 2 inches, and suddenly the Fjordling gets more punch, less drag, and handling that feels downright aggressive. Of course, with more speed comes more responsibility and a greater chance of discovering weak points, so extra attention is paid to steering, structure, and instrumentation. Next up, the old corroded through-hole fittings are retired and replaced with shiny new brass or bronze ones. Brass isn't just chosen because it looks classy, it resists saltwater corrosion and plays nicely with fiberglass on a chemical level. Each fitting is bedded in resin and installed flush, keeping water flow smooth and drag to a minimum. Inside the cockpit, the console returns, and the wiring and instruments begin to take shape. Gaff rig gauges are mounted on a varnished wooden panel, blending modern raceboat precision with old-school Nordic charm. The freshly molded splash well receives a glossy, amber-tinted resin coat that looks as good as it performs. This final layer seals the fiberglass against water, UV rays, and chemical wear, while also adding a warm, classic finish. Accurate data is critical when you're dealing with a high-output two-stroke capable of pushing well past 200 horsepower. The wiring is routed cleanly under the dash, keeping things safe, tidy, and true to the Fjordling's minimalist design. The crisp white hull contrasts beautifully with the amber resin accents, but the real star of the show is hanging off the back. The Mercury Racing XR2 was born in the late 1980s for high-performance applications. In stock form, this 2-liter V6 two-stroke produces around 200 horsepower, all wrapped in a lightweight package. With race-tuned exhausts, performance carbs, and modern fuel delivery, it can easily exceed that. Unlike modern 4-stroke outboards, the XR2 delivers instant throttle response. No waiting, no hesitation, just pure explosive acceleration. That power comes from its rapid firing cycle and tuned exhaust system, which clears gases efficiently and keeps the engine screaming happily at high RPM. Mounting such an engine on a 1966 hull is no small decision, and that's why the transom and stringers received serious upgrades. The original structure was never meant to handle this kind of torque, so it was rebuilt using 15mm marine plywood laminated between multiple layers of fiberglass. Hydrodynamically, the pairing is bold but brilliant. The Fjordling's narrow beam and fine entry reduce resistance, allowing it to rise quickly onto plane and maintain stability at speed. The raised transom about 5 centimeters higher perfectly positions the propeller, reducing drag and improving lift. When the boat finally hits the water, all that effort pays off. The XR2 fires up after years of silence, roaring like a raceboat let loose, proving that this classic isn't just restored, it's reborn, louder, faster, and grinning all the way across the waves.